I couldn't take.
So we got Dave, Meredith, Noel, even Roger.
Aye.
All right. Let's do it. I'll call to order the Town of Mount Desert Planning Board meeting for March 9th, 2022, and welcome aboard. We are in hybrid territory here with in-person meeting here at the meeting room on 21C Street, and we've got also board members and public online with us through Zoom. I'll make introductions of the board members first. I'm William Hanley, I'm chair. We've got Christy Anastasia, vice chair. Got Meredith Randolph, Dave Ashmore, Tracy Loftus-Keller. And I want to first say, Christy, thank you and congratulations. Christy chaired her first hearing on the 23rd, I think it was. And how'd that go, Christy?
Ask everybody else how it went.
She did a fantastic job.
Yeah, of course.
It was terrifying.
I think she did a great job. However, she called on me first instead of you calling on me last all the time.
I got points for that.
Yeah, Dave. All right, let's, you want to give the Zoom spiel just for old time's sake?
Who, me? Yeah. Welcome to Zoom. If you haven't Zoomed yet in the past 2 years, you're in for a treat. Please sign in by using the chat. If you go to the chat and put your name in there, then we have your name for the record. Use the chat to sign in, but don't use the chat for a side conversation, please. If you want to be recognized, if you can find the right thing, you can raise your fake hand, you can raise your real hand, your real virtual hand, or you can raise your real hand in the room, but get the chair person's attention. And if you are not speaking, if you can keep yourself on mute, that would be helpful. So we have less background noise, and we can have like another couple hundred people in there. So we should have enough seats for this meeting.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, moving along here, we've got next item on the agenda, we've got the approval of minutes. We've got the minutes from the 9th, the quarry, and then the 23rd.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 9th, 2022, as written.
I'll second that.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor, Christy,
Anastasia, aye.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, aye.
Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
myself.
Now, come on, Bill. Dave just mentioned how he appreciated not being last.
I'll throw a curveball here somewhere, Meredith. All right, well, and then we've got the 23rd, and I was not here for that.
That was February 23rd?
Yes.
Must have been. Okay. I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 23rd, 2022, comma, as written.
Dave Ashmore, second.
All right, all those in favor, Christy,
Anastasia, aye.
Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Tracy.
Tracy Keller, aye.
All right, so we got,
And for the record,
what's that?
oh, you can't.
Yeah,
He
I
wasn't
was-
there.
All right, so we got minutes taken care of. Next item on the agenda, we have a public hearing tonight We have land use zoning ordinance and land use map amendments for the 2022 annual town meeting on May 3rd, 2022.
Published.
And was this one published?
Yes. Saw it.
Hey, gang.
Hello, Noel.
It was published in the Mountains on Earth Islander on Thursday, February 17th.
There should be another one in there too.
And the Ellsworth American on Thursday, February 24th.
Okay.
You're right. Noel, I think you're on.
You want me to jump right in?
Go for it.
All right. So for the annual town meeting, there are 4 proposed land use amendments. The first one is related to non-conforming lots. Bill, is it helpful if I share the screen, my screen?
Yes.
So everybody should be able to see a Word document or a document that this is the proposed amendment to the nonconformity section highlighted in yellow. We're adding some text that basically addresses some ambiguity in both the ordinances and case law related to whether or not you can add modify lot lines or add acreage to a legally existing non-conforming lot of record without causing that lot of record to become to lose its grandfathered status. So if you added some acreage to your lot, to your non-conforming lot, and it still is non-conforming, you with this change it's just clarifying that you're able to do that. Questions, comments?
Not applicable to lots in the shoreland zone that are wholly or partially within the shoreland zone.
Correct.
Yeah. So our goal is to make a recommendation for the.
You're gonna ask if there's any public comment.
Is there any public comment? None heard. It's the board's task tonight to make the recommendation for consideration at the May 3rd town meeting. And if anybody wanted to turn that into a motion, feel free.
Are we making a recommendation that for it to be at the town meeting, or are we making a recommendation to the selectmen that make the recommendation at the town meeting?
To the town meeting.
Oh, right to the town meeting.
Yeah, well, yeah, the selectmen are going to put it on the warrant, and then the planning board needs to recommend passage. I think that's how it works.
Because I know that there was
Passage. That was what they did last night.
last night, there was one item that said planning board, and they announced that that was in error, and that it should have said the warrant committee.
No, it should have said board of selectmen.
No, like
Board of
the first amendment says planning board recommends passage, and then that's what you're voting on.
Right, the board of selectmen do not recommend land use amendments.
Ah.
It's planning board and the warrant committee.
Yeah, the mistake from last night, Meredith, was Article 5 regarding the fire prevention and protection emergency. It says planning board recommends passes, but that's not a thing that you guys would have reviewed. That was the issue last night.
Okay, so I make a motion that we make a recommendation that this warrant article be passed at the town meeting.
Passed or presented?
Well, we recommend passage.
You're recommending it.
You're recommending.
Recommend.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep. I think Dave seconded.
Dave Ashmore, second.
All right. All those in favor, Christie,
Anastasia, aye.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Myself, William Hanley. You never know where I'm gonna go next.
Great.
All right, what's the next one, Noel?
The next one is, this one is related to applications in the shoreland zone. And updated shoreland zoning regulations or standards in the model ordinance are requiring permit applications for development within the shoreland zone to present photographs as part of the application materials, and post-construction photographs. So we're adding a section to the permit application standards in the ordinance to reflect what DEP is requiring for applications within the shoreland zone. Pretty similar to what you would have to do for a permit by rule, technically, especially the pre-construction conditions.
All right, are there any public comment first? Okay, none heard.
I make a motion that the planning board make this a recommendation to be passed at the May 3rd town meeting.
Anastasia, second.
All right, all those in favor, Meredith,
Randolph, aye.
Christie,
Anastasia, aye.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
myself, William Hanley, aye.
Okay, the next one is related to accessory dwelling units. And trying to do two things at once here. This is just a clarification in the ordinance. You recall a couple of town meetings ago, we added some provisions in the ordinance that would allow for an accessory dwelling unit on a parcel. And I know Kim has been getting some questions about whether or not you can add multiple accessory dwelling units to a parcel if you meet certain lot size requirements. And so what we're doing in this change is basically just clarifying that this exception is only one per lot. So you're only allowed one accessory dwelling unit per lot. Just to clarify the current policy. That's not to say that if you have bigger lot sizes, you couldn't do more dwelling units, but that's for this specific exemption. Questions?
Any public comment? Okay, none heard. Any planning board questions? Meredith?
I make a motion that the planning board recommend this for passage at the May 3rd town meeting.
Anastasia, second.
All right, all those in favor, Christie,
Anastasia, aye.
Meredith,
Randolph, aye.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
myself, William Hanley, aye.
Okay. The last one is a proposed zone change request that is being considered. Let me share the screen. And I won't put Roger on the spot yet. Roger St. Amand is here, but maybe for this application, maybe for something else. But Roger was representing the homeowner, the property owner who is proposing this zone change request. So the Luso committee has reviewed it. Essentially, there's an RP district in Long Pond, as you can see from this map, that doesn't actually meet current RP zoning designation standards. So there's 4 criteria in the ordinance that triggers a resource protection, and this little small area of resource protection doesn't meet those criteria, and the applicant is requesting, or the homeowner, the property owner is requesting that be changed to be consistent with all the lots around it and the upland area of SR5. DEP supports the change and has reviewed it to determine that it doesn't meet the RP standards. So it's a very small area of RP and doesn't really appear to meet the need or criteria for it.
You guys want to know any of the criteria, the standards of why it would be designated resource protection?
Sure.
Well, the resource protection district criteria requires that areas within 250 feet of inland wading bird and waterfowl habitat area, this is not a designated area. The area is within 100-year floodplain as mapped on FEMA. This area is above the FEMA 62.5. If you look at the survey map, I think it's 64. The area is 2 or more contiguous acres of sustained slopes of 20% or greater. That's no way 2 acres. And that the area of 2 or more acres of wetlands is not connected to a surface water body. It's not. And that the land adjacent to a coastal wetlands and with steep bluffs. And this isn't it. So it doesn't meet any of the one of the 5 criteria. So therefore, it should be resource protected.
Okay. Didn't hear any public comment. Close that. Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the planning board make a recommendation for passage of this article on the May 3rd town meeting.
Dave Ashmore, second.
All those in favor, Meredith, Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
Christie,
Anastasia, I.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
myself, William Hanley, aye.
So weird, it almost seems like it should be able to go away without even voting.
Yeah, it's just an amendment to
It's
the
not.
official, an amendment to the official zoning map requires, town meeting approval, but it is a little weird to have to go through all this just for that.
I wonder how it was originally designated that.
Kim had a little more background than I did, but I mean, I think it had something to do with, maybe there was some slope discussion in that area, and there might not have been, that might have been in one of the areas that wasn't developed at the time, but it's already, that whole area is already developed now. It's a weird little anomaly.
Yep.
Yeah, in the town of Mount Desert didn't have any resource protection district on their zoning maps. And so DEP came to the town, met with me and Kyle, and we looked at all sorts of different properties. And ideally she was the one that there were certain criteria that designated the resource protection district. It had to do with like development within 500 feet of each other. And at the time, this lot still isn't developed. And so they kind of picked and choose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they got on the map. And everybody was notified that had any resource protection. We had to hold public hearings, and we had to send them certified letters to each person that informing them that they were going to have some resource protection on their property now because of DEP requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of how it happened.
Curious.
Well, that was it.
All right. Well, thank you, Noel.
Thanks.
And thank you for last night too.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I stumbled through the question. I was not prepared to get started on that. That was pretty funny. But good. Appreciate it.
All right.
Enjoy.
Thanks, Noel.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. Item 4 on the agenda tonight, we have a nonconformity. It's sections 4.3.6, 4.3.5, nonconforming structures, reconstruction or replacement. Section 4.3.2, expansions in the shoreline zone. And the owner is Summerscape Realty Trust, Elizabeth Carlisle Thomas. Location 18 Northern Neck Road, Mount Desert, tax map 17, lot 12. Zone is shoreline residential 2, and the purpose again is sections 4.3.6 and 4.3.5 reconstruction replacement, and section 4.3.2 expansions of a non-conforming structure. We had a site inspection at 4:30.
I was gonna read these guys.
Absolutely, and were the, was this one published and the butters notified?
It was published in the Ellsworth American and the Mount Desert Islander on Thursday, February 24th, 2022. And butters were notified by letter dated February 23rd, 2022.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I was the sole planning board member in attendance today, so I guess I drew the straw to report on the site visit. So I will report my observations from the site visit. We had 3 people there from Carla's office, and we first talked about just kind of the general site organization layout. There's an existing kind of linear low mid-century camp, follows the shoreline. There's a existing garage. In between kind of the garage and the house, there's a primary utility line. There's underground power, there's septic, there appears to be a tank or right directly behind the house to the west. A lot of mature tree growth. I mean, I think I saw probably one of the largest white pines I've seen over on the north line of the property. Then we walked over on the south side of the camp, and the applicant explained just kind of where the addition was going, kind of off the corner of the house, migrating to the south. They were going to work with the existing topography. It seemed like the elevation of the proposed addition was working well with the addition of the camp. And then we continued around kind of down by the shore and up on the deck, and the deck was fantastic. It was, it was one of these rare instances where it's, I mean, it's definitely beyond the 0 foot.
Oh, no, the cantilevers over.
Yeah, it cantilevers over the water. And, we talked, the applicant explained about how they were, the primary expansion again is on the south. It's all measured to the roof line. The roof line was going to be adjusted. They were going to claim some of the existing footprint under the existing roof line as interior space. Some of that interior space was going to push out onto the existing deck area. And I'll turn it over to the applicant then.
That's great. We'll have Juliet present, and
Yeah,
Rainey may share his screen talking about the site.
great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Juliet Gilby from Design Group Collaborative. Carla Haskell is the principal owner is here as well. And on Zoom, we have Rainey Cordemonch from Head of Fine Engineering, the civil engineer, and Betsy Thomas, who is the owner.
Welcome aboard.
As was just mentioned, this is the existing footprint of the camp. And this is the proposed addition footprint, which is inboard of the 25-foot setback from the shore of Long Pond. We started off our conversation on site with Rainey talking about the different site development elements that are proposed. So Rainey, if you would like to speak, and I can gesture for you on your behalf.
Yeah, sure. So we started out talking about really the existing site layout, where the septic tank is, kind of to the west side of the house, and there's really a natural, well, an existing utility corridor in that area that we're trying to reuse. to limit disturbance on the site. So that's where really all the utilities serving the building are proposed to be brought through, coming through that existing corridor. We do need, we're not aware of where or if there is a disposal field for the septic system on site. So there is a septic design to replace that, also to remove the existing septic tank and effluent pump and replace it in the same location with a new tank with a pump. So that's really the big limit of utilities on the site, is all kind of confined running in an east-west direction, in between and near, from the house up to the garage. As far as site layout and disturbance and site grading, it was mentioned well in the opening comments by the chairman that we're really trying to work with the site and keep the existing grades and not have to do much cutting to kind of fit the building into the side, but really just work with the topography that's there. That way existing drainage patterns on the site can remain pretty much untouched as they are. Some small grading and a small site built retaining wall, probably to the tune of about 2 feet in height at its tallest point, will help to sort of mitigate some of the grades that are coming down even towards the existing house, and just allow a small area where drainage can go away from the house and then be carried both north and south away from the house. So that's a kind of a general overview of the site. Happy to answer any questions. Or Juliet and Carla, if there's anything I glossed over, anything that needs more detail, please feel free to let me know.
Juliet can talk about maybe the roof line and.
Yeah, I can go to architectural plan then. Because in the red dashed area, the distinct footprint that includes not only building enclosure, but roof overhangs, the deck, which is going to be stairs, and the small roof that goes to the side of the dwelling. And then the second plan shows that dashed outline again, and then the area of proposed expansion, including its roof overhangs in green. As was mentioned, we're working within that existing footprint with the 2 small areas here, and it's an area of roof overhang that's getting cleaned as additional deck area, and then an area here of the existing main deck that is proposed to be enclosed as part of the building. The percentage of the increase is under the 30% of the existing footprint for that addition. And in terms of what is going there, this is a primary bedroom addition with associated bathroom and laundry area, and a screen porch on the pond side. And that area was all staked out on site. There's an existing deck on the north end that is retained. Part of it will be enclosed into a screen porch, and part of it will remain open. We're retaining the foundations, using them, retaining the lion's share of the first floor framing, with the exception of an existing entry porch here, which is a slab on grade, which will be framed up at the level of the first floor. And then also the living space that's under the roof here is lower down currently than where it's proposed. We're trying to bring that up to the first floor level so that accessibility is greater, but we're keeping those foundations with the building up and down. So the roofs will be removed and rebuilt in a new configuration, which is shown here. We're still trying to direct most of the roof flow as we can away from the pond. The addition is all sloping to the west away from the pond. And that will be tying into the drainage system that Rainey mentioned. where you put to the elevation. So in terms of building height, the existing high point of the roof is at 20 feet above the 61-foot water line, which is where we're measuring from, since part of that deck, as mentioned, is above the water. So we weren't calculating anything from an average grade from the land itself. We're kind of using the worst case scenario. And we're proposing to match that for the highest point of the roof. So we're working to match the existing roof height. And then when we're looking at the allowable height inboard of the 25-foot setback, that 20 feet just happens to align with the height that's allowed within that zone, which is kind of a happy coincidence. In terms of the feeling of the building, we're really trying to work with the mid-century camp language. We're actually keeping this corner window as kind of a sort of a heart and soul of the project. The owner really appreciates that part of what's there. But then in rebuilding these walls and recladding them in a similar material, which is stained wood siding. So it still will feel like a mid-century camp, although greatly improved in terms of its condition. For the deck itself, we're definitely looking to replace the decking itself, which is deteriorated, and take away an existing non-compliant guardrail. It's too low and too open to meet current code, and replacing it with something that meets code. And that applies as well to this deck on the north side of the building. And if we look at the floor plan themselves, the plan laid out is how we're going to work. Enter the building, the site is sloping down the portico. There's an existing entry port, which is a slab on grade. We have that room floor here on the front and west side, a bedroom, large bedroom here, smaller bedroom here, and a kitchen. And then the living room is sort of the main room that faces the deck facing water. And that basic configuration is something we're retaining. So we're trying to open up the feeling between the kitchen and the living room, and again, raise that up to meet the level of the kitchen, and just, basically reinstating everything that's there in the same spot. And then the addition that's to south with primary bath, a laundry space, the bedroom, and its associated deck. We are taking away one of the two stairs to grade from the deck. Because it just, in terms of plan and flow, doesn't make much sense anymore.
And in terms of, there's the low retaining wall is right down kind of bottom of the page there. And that's, and at the site visit, you were explaining that, the existing floor of the camp is like right at grade elevation there. And there was a water, some ice damming and what obvious water issue on that west line.
It's causing some damage to some of the framing along this wall. So we're trying to take that grade down. We're trying to remediate that condition and sloping this part of the site toward the drill that will be established against that retaining wall.
And then you were talking about that the addition migrated to the south, because if it were to come to the west, it would be a much more significant cut into that grade.
That's correct. So if we were to take this and transpose it here on this site, the back end of it would land where the existing and proposed septic tank is. So we need to cut into this grade for not only that addition and the retaining wall to pull that grade away from the building, but also this we need to push back. And we don't know in terms of any test pits what's going on in here. We might require blasting if we encounter ledge. So it felt like this entire swath of the site could get impacted if we were to do that. There are also, this is the large pine tree that the gentleman mentioned, which is in a group with 2 other very large spruces. And that's something we do not want to touch because not only are they large mature trees, but they have a screening effect between this property and their neighbors. And neither the owner nor I believe the neighbors do the loss of that vegetative buffer as well.
And just for the record too, can you point out where the garage is and what's going on with the garage?
Right, so this is, the garage is existing, it's up as almost 5 feet in terms of floor elevation from the house. There were marked on site a number of trees that are to be taken down regardless of the status of this proposed project due to hazards. And so there, 2 of them are actually on the corners of that garage. There also are several right adjacent to this deck and another spruce tree here that are significantly overhanging the existing structure.
You've got a garage, a lot of utilities, some challenging grades, and a lot of mature trees directly west of the camp. On the back side, yep. All right, well, thank you. Yeah, and I'll open it up to the public. If there's any questions, comments from the public. Going once. Twice. All right, I'll close public comment, and I guess we got to dig into the review now of this. And if the board recalls, we've got this kind of circuitous path to follow with non-conforming projects where I've got a checklist here somewhere where, essentially we're looking at 3 sections here. We're looking at 4.36, that's the non-conforming structures reconstruction or replacement. We're looking at 4.35, the standards of relocation of a non-conforming structure. That's where we go through the 6 criteria: the size of the lot, the slope of the land, the potential for soil erosion. And then section 4.32, this is the language about the expansions in the shoreline zone, where, they are completing or utilizing the allowable 30% expansion, and how that criteria is met. And the thing that throws me every time is, don't we go through this kind of out of order?
It's pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta do 4.3.6 first because
Right.
reconstruction replacement, what they're proposing in the existing structure, it's gonna obviously be more than 50% of the market value
Right.
of the structure, because you're completely gotten it, ideally, correct? So that's gonna be why it's before you, it's because it's gonna be more than 50% of the market value.
Yeah, exactly. So we do that first to have the project qualify for the further review of the 2 sections. So, and I'm sure the board is quite familiar with that, where and if you'll bear with me for a little bit, I'm gonna just read a key paragraph from section 436, where it states that any non-conforming structure which is located less than the required setback from water body and is removed by 50% or less of the market value, or damaged or destroyed by 50% or less of the market value of the structure, excluding normal maintenance and repair, may be reconstructed if a permit is obtained by the code enforcement officer. Well, this isn't a code enforcement officer issue, because you're obviously doing more than 50% of the current value of the structure. And, you know, that's one of the first findings the board needs to make, is if we're in agreement that what's being proposed here, that the structure reconstruction or replacement meets this, you know, we got to look at the greatest practical extent, and that, you know, it's more than 50% of the current value. So anybody's got any questions on that? You want to talk that one through? Feel free. Someone wants to make a motion, feel free to.
Are we getting stuck because of looking for things quantifying that what the value, it's just, they're doing enough so that we presume that it's over 50%, and then does it qualify as a expansion or a reconstruction?
Yeah, Kim, where do we, is this requiring like a letter from a
Appraiser.
appraiser?
No, we usually use a tax card,
Yeah.
but you can tell they're removing a bunch of walls.
Mhm.
I mean, it's they're gutting it, and then they're adding a dining room, enclosing a dining room area, which isn't currently there.
I guess I just start wondering whether, but do you see that it's clear that it's an expansion or a reconstruction?
It's both. I
It's
mean, you've
both.
got, it's reconstruction because they're completely gutting it, keeping the shell.
Right.
So therefore, you know, it's no different than tearing it down completely. Like,
Well, I
I
mean,
hear what you're
I just, I do disagree with that, and I guess maybe we should have tried to quantify it better. We're keeping the foundation, we're keeping the floor structure, we're keeping the exterior perimeter walls, and most of the walls are actually in place. We are moving one wall. We are building the dining room area on the deck, we're enclosing that. So we are gutting the interiors because in fact, they, for health and safety reasons, they do need to be. The big change is we are replacing the roof.
yeah, so the whole roof being redone, and then you're doing all the new wiring, new plumbing, right?
Yes, yes.
And then you're doing, like you said, some walls. So that's, yeah, you're keeping the framing, but I mean, it's ideally, it's gonna cost a lot more than 50% of the market value of this structure today.
Mhm.
I guess it would be close. I do agree, though Betsy can attest to the fact that the value of the property was pretty inflated because of the.
Yeah, but there's a, and I don't see the tax card again. Let me go get the tax
Is
card.
that,
Let me print
Yeah, do we
the
have-
tax card. You have the old one in there.
Yes, we do.
But the current tax card gives the replacement cost.
Oh,
That Kyle was.
What
the replacement cost.
okay, great.
Reprint it out.
it appeared too that the roof was kind of in bad structural
Absolutely. I mean,
shape.
what we're replacing is
Yeah.
typically what's in pretty poor condition at this
Mhm.
point, undersized, yeah. Keeping the foundation, keeping the floor framing, I guess we really are trying to utilize as much as, of the structure as we can. And that was, those were in good shape. We had a head of fine engineering office, our head of fine came, we took a look at it and verified what I felt as well when I looked at it, is that the foundation, like framing, is in good shape. So that was a nice thing.
Can everybody hear okay online? No.
Sometimes it's pretty difficult, at least I've found.
Yeah.
There is a moment where I think you turn sideways towards to look at the thing, that it gets a little muffled.
Okay. Tim is going to pull the tax card on the property.
So
The
the roof,
replacement,
Nope.
what? Is 111,900. You divide that by 2, that's 55,950. So if it's gonna be more than 55,950, that's more than 50%
Mhm.
of the replacement cost. So I suspect the roof and everything you're talking about, electrical, plumbing, is gonna be more than $55,950.
and the replacement of the roof, of the existing roof, it's going back exactly the same way as the way it was?
No, it's flatter.
No,
Isn't it?
that's,
It looks
that's
like it's
correct.
flat.
We are flattening it out.
A little bit, because did it shed? That
It
was
does,
shed.
it does.
Right, there's a one wire. So it does say no cost. There's one large shed roof over what was the existing, the original footprint when it was first built. This is a later addition, also pre-1989. And this one is actually a low slope gable that, half drains to the west, half drains to the pond side. So we are proposing a shed to the west again for the proposed addition. And then also a shed that has 2 different slopes over the lion's share of this existing footprint. So basically a steeper slope, kind of with the high point facing the water, and then a lower slope over this lower bar that's there now. It has a lot of the like utility spaces like the bathrooms, but it's all still sloping back to the west. And then this portion has a low slope gable here and a shed sloping back away from the pond over the proposed dining room. There are some things in common, but some things are changed. It's not a one-to-one.
So in the elevations that you have in the set, the top plan is the existing and the bottom is the new proposed on the
Yes.
water side?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So circling back to the task at hand, 4.36 is where we're at, and does this one fall under our jurisdiction?
I think we have to determine that.
Yeah.
Do we need to make that in a form of a motion?
We do.
I make a motion that this is more than 50% reconstruction and addition equaling more than 50% of the rebuild value. Therefore, it falls under our jurisdiction.
Could we reference the calculation from the tax card?
According to the tax card, blah, 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 blah. We can fill in the numbers.
Right, reconstruction, replacement cost of you can use tax card. We'll put
Yeah.
it part of the exhibit.
Yeah.
I wrote on it anyways.
in accordance with what's the date of the tax card?
It just says when I printed it, which was today.
You could state the value of over 55,950.
Yes, I think we should be specific.
And Kimberly, can you give me the replacement cost on this part?
111,900.
Okay, thank you.
Want to read that convoluted motion?
Okay. It's gonna have to be put all together here.
Yeah.
So I believe Meredith moved that in reference to the tax card calculation of reconstruction replacement costing $111,900, the replacement cost will be more than 50% of the pre-construction and therefore falls under the planning board's jurisdiction. How does that sound?
Mhm.
Yeah, Meredith moved and we don't have a second.
Anastasia second.
All right, all those in favor, Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Christie,
Anastasia, I.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, aye.
Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
myself, William Hanley, aye. Do you want us to sign this? as
Yes.
we go through it?
You're gonna have to sign all three of them.
Yeah. Then we're essentially working back now. So now we get into 435 and the whole relocation to the greatest practical extent criteria,
Well, there, yeah,
or do we jump to 432 about the 30% expansion?
yeah, I would do the expansion.
Okay.
And then you could
Yeah.
kind of classify it with this. Relocate, you know,
But, I mean, aren't they kind of simultaneous?
yeah, in a way, they are. So they're explaining why they can't set the addition back further.
Right. So again, guys, the structure of the two sections is 432 is about 30% expansion. And 435 are the relocation of non-conforming structures. You know, why, you know, how do they meet the fixed criteria to the greatest practical extent? And you know, looking at 432 expansions in the shoreline zone, if you guys bear with me again as I read through some of the highlights here. Yeah, so obviously,
D is the one you don't.
yeah, D is the primary one we're reviewing, and that's where it talks about that all other non-conforming principal and accessory structures that don't meet the water body setback may be expanded or altered as follows, as long as the other applicable standards of the ordinance are met. And it says first that for structures that are located less than 75 feet from the normal high water line of a water body, the maximum combined total footprint of all structures may not be expanded to an area greater than 1,000 square feet or 30% larger than the footprint. Yeah, whichever's greater. That exists on January 1st, 89. And I believe on your floor plans, you have the calculation, and for the record, could you state what the calculation is?
Yes, so the pre-1989 existing footprint, including decks, exterior stairs, roof overhangs, and attached slab patios, is 2712 square feet. And the greater of 800 square feet, or 30% of that, 30% comes to 814 square feet. And the proposed footprint of the proposed expansion, including its roof overhangs, is 812 square feet.
So you guys meet the 30% expansion criteria. You're 2 square feet under the allowable. And then it goes on in section D. It talks about for structures located less than 75 feet from the normal high water line of the water body, the maximum height of any structure may not be made greater than 20 feet or the height of the existing structure, whichever is greater. And I believe you quantified that on the building elevations. Just again, for the record, if you could explain that.
Yes. The existing calculated height to the high point of the roof is at 81 feet. The water line, which is what we're using to measure the height, is at 61. And the proposed roofs, the high points of them all fall, the highest point of that being at the same height, 81 feet or 20 feet above the 61-foot water line.
You're right at 20 feet.
They'll have to have a surveyor determine the height of that building.
Yeah.
That'll be a condition.
Okay. Yeah, there was he did. take
I
a-
saw you had a note on there.
Yeah, on the actual survey, that's where.
He did. Did he put a benchmark up
He
there? for you
did,
guys?
yeah.
So we dealt with 30% expansion.
Yeah, and
we
just
dealt
also
with
in your,
height.
in your packet, there's been no expansion since January 1, 1989.
Okay,
Just to let you know, on the structure, the only permit that's been issued was for the deck. They just reconstructed the deck. And that was in 2000, but it didn't change the footprint. It was the same footprint.
yeah. So in a nutshell, that's the 2 primary review criteria of 4.3.2.
I make a
Height and-
motion. Oh, do you want a
Go-
motion?
Go for it. Yes, please.
Make a motion that the proposed project meets the 2 criteria of within 30% expansion, as well as a remaining no taller than the existing roof.
Sounds good. How about a second?
Anastasia, second.
Any further discussion? None heard. Right. All those in favor? Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Christie,
Anastasia, I.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, aye.
Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
myself, William Hanley, aye. And so that was our motion for essentially all of 4.3.2.
Correct.
You know,
Put a condition about the surveyor to determine the height of the structure
yes, and that we do have the approval,
and DEP approval.
DEP approval and the surveyor confirmation of the roof height or
Height of
approval,
Just height of the structure
height of the structure.
as measured by the mean original grade for downhills.
Got that, Heidi?
Okay, it's measured from the mean.
Original grade at the downhill side of the structure. To its highest point. Which is the roof. Excluding chimneys.
So there were 2 approval conditions on
Yeah,
that.
so surveyors to confirm the height of the structures as measured from the original grade and the
Mean,
down,
from mean original grade.
the mean original grade at the downhill side
Of the structure.
of the structure. Yes, I just. And then DEP approval, is that what I heard?
To its highest point,
Mhm.
What was that?
to its highest point, which is the roof. I think you had that, you wrote that down. Excluding chimneys. I could just say as defined by the land use zoning.
So surveyor to confirm the height of the structure is measured from the mean original grade of the downhill side of the structure to its highest point excluding chimneys. And how do you want to word the second condition?
DEP approval.
Mhm.
Dependent on or contingent on DEP approval?
Well,
Contingent
yeah,
upon.
yeah, DEP will grant it anyways. You guys approve it, they'll grant it. They wait for you anyways.
Okay.
At some point that flip flop.
Oh, don't get me going. If it is, it's different every time. but-
Mhm. All right, so we've done 436, we've done 432, and now we're gonna go back to 435. And 435 is all the relocation criteria to the greatest practical extent. And if you bear with me, I'm gonna read the introductory.
You know what you can say on that one?
Yeah,
Is that they're maintaining the structure.
mhm,
They're not tearing it down and relocate, and being required to relocate it, because they're keeping the existing footprint. So all you have to say in there is that the building's not being torn down, not being raised.
mhm,
They're ideally renovating the interior of the existing structure, but so they're keeping the foundation,
mhm.
so there's no reason for it to be relocated.
But,
You know what
and
I'm saying?
yeah, and does it strengthen a board's motion where we mentioned about all the mature tree growth?
Yeah,
and-
mention everything,
and
yes.
the existing
Mention
utilities.
the topography of the
the-
land, hence the retaining wall
the
to hold up
prox-
the land.
The proximity to the other structure
Yeah,
on
the
the
septic
site.
system location, tree removal.
So, I mean, so looking at the checklist, they got it broken down by the
Yeah.
size of the lot.
Yeah, but you don't vote on them one by one. You do a motion in the end.
Okay,
You can just say what's the size of the property.
yeah. What is the size of the property?
1.6 acres.
1.6,
Yeah.
yeah. We talked about the topography that
You've got the expert here, Renee,
yeah,
telling you the topography of the property.
the property is primarily sloping west to east. Downhill.
And there could be ledge.
There could be ledge if it was relocated, it would eat into the existing topography more,
The addition, proposed
the
addition.
proposed addition.
Yeah,
The potential for soil erosion is,
hence they're putting the retaining wall, because they have soil issues right
Yeah.
now, runoff.
right,
issues.
so thanks to the addition of the low retaining wall and French drain, the
Yes.
soil erosion issues are being maintained.
And the roof sloping away from the water also.
Mhm. It goes on to talk about the location of other structures on the property. There's a sizable garage here on the property, and if the footprint was relocated, remember, we have the 20-foot required separation to accessory structures.
No,
No,
that's principle. That doesn't, you don't
That-
have a setback between,
no,
not a garage, like a garage and a house.
the garage can be right next to the house.
Yeah, houses have attached garages.
Well, this one has a detached garage. though.
Yeah, but it doesn't, like this accessory structure in the main house is two principal buildings that
Okay.
require the 20-foot.
So the other structures on the property. though.
Yeah, you
So
gotta
we-
look at what else, how much development's there on
Right.
the site and the neighbors.
Do the utilities count as structures?
No,
No,
it's structures, buildings,
Okay.
neighbors, structures. I don't know how close the neighbors are with their development. When you went to the site visit, are there any
Did-
close buildings to the property line?
Oh, just here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
like
like
the-
the house and the garage, it looks like,
Mhm.
the second floor, about there, but I'm just gesturing, I don't have.
Sure, sure.
the septic seemed like an issue, and that's the next criteria where, you've got a existing tank location, we've got a unknown location of a disposal field. We've got it,
Yeah, they're putting in a new system.
and they're putting in a new system.
And that's right there. That's a showing where the field's going.
Yeah,
And the tank has to be a minimum of 8 feet from the building.
and they're putting the tank in the existing location. The new
That's
tank.
right, that's one of the benefits, is that we don't have, we can reuse that location. Is that correct, Rainey? That existing tank location we can reuse.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hope, is that the existing excavation can just be reused so that there's less of a chance that we need to get into any type of ledge removal to either put the tank in or bring lines in and out of the tank.
And the tank meets the setback. And also if this building were to shift behind there, that would have encroached into that tank
Mhm.
location and the retaining wall.
Mhm. The vegetation to be removed to accomplish the relocation.
There are trees they said they don't want to remove.
Mhm.
I don't feel like we're being very consistent with the way that we've done it in the past.
How so?
Well, the first, like everything, it seems to be sort of arguing for it. Like, we in the past have looked at the whole lot and whether the building could be moved back. Things like, well, they're going to create a new leach field. So, reusing the existing tank is just the tank. It's not a massive discouragement, and the fact that they have to put in a new leach field anyway doesn't seem like a very strong argument as to why they need to move it back. When you talk about grade, where it sits, there's significant grade, but I didn't really hear as to what the grade is on the rest of the lot. It doesn't look to me like from the contour lines up above. Well, I didn't go to the site visit, but I can't tell what the, for the whole acre and a half or whatever it is. In the past, we've discussed whether there was someplace else on that acre and a half that the house could be put. And we also don't have to make every one of the criteria say that this is the reason why they aren't moving it back.
They're not moving, they're not tearing down the building. Relocating.
That I think is the primary argument. So things like, because other people may say, well, we have an existing tank that we want to use, but we have to basically rebuild the septic, and that's why we're going to argue that we can't move the building back. I would, if everything else looked good for moving the building back, I'd say, well, you're rebuilding the leach field, you got to move the tank. That's not a big deal. So I guess I think we should make the arguments for not moving it truly the arguments that are for not moving it. But the things like, it seems to me the issues of grade are because it's in front of the 75-foot setback. But or the issues of grade that we've discussed are about within the 75-foot setback. But the grade, if you moved it, would be what the grade is behind the 75-foot setback. And I guess I'm just concerned that it sounds like you guys are making every single criteria be a reason why they can't move the building. And I think in other applications, we would say that those aren't, in the same scenario, those aren't justifications for not moving the building.
Christy, Dave, thoughts?
I'm just thinking about that. I don't have any thoughts yet.
Yeah, Meredith, and I'm not trying to blow through this. I'm just kind of, summarizing or kind of just getting the criteria on the table here that we usually talk through on this section.
And we've been somewhat stringent with some people, so I don't want to sound like we are just blowing through the criteria. I think that that's a strong reason not to move it, because they're using a significant amount of the existing building. And that's the reason is, so when we go through we started off with the size of the lot, or I don't know if that's where we started, but that was one of the criteria. They've got a fair
Yeah.
amount of land there. So that's not really a reason that they can't move it.
Of course.
What's the grade of the lot? Is that it's on a very precipitous slope and it only flattens out right near the water, or is there? Seems to me that it looks to me like from the contour lines that it's a pretty gentle slope up a hill.
Rennie, can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And we actually talked about this a little bit at the site visit, that when you look at it, it doesn't, and this is all kind of framing in the context of the overall plan is to keep the existing foundation. It's a good foundation. It's got good floor framing, so there's no need to, if you had to excavate and remove the foundation, it's a different conversation. But trying to work with an addition onto the existing building, it looks kind of on paper and even a little bit at site at first that, yeah, those grades to the west of the building aren't that severe. But the problem is that the finished floor of the existing building is so low that to try and put an addition and go west, you really start cutting into that slope pretty bad. By the time you get your floor framing down to the top of concrete and you have grade slope away for a few feet, you're at a spot, by the time you do that you need like a 4 to 5 foot retaining wall in spots on that west side of the building, trying to sneak that in between the addition and the garage. And
But that's
then
not
once you,
actually the argument that you're making it, that this section is saying, what is it about the grade that means that you can't relocate the whole entire building, not expand backwards, but that you want to work with this existing site? The criteria is saying, why aren't you doing the whole entire project behind the 75-foot setbacks?
because there's no need to tear down the existing building, I guess would be the response.
Exactly. And I understand that. I'm just saying the way that we do this, and I've done it with other people, is we do criteria by criteria. So right now we're just talking about the site grade. So you'd only be discussing the grade behind the 75-foot setback. And if it's a nice gentle slope, that's okay. You have reasons why you don't want to move it. It's just that's not one of the reasons.
Okay, so to be honest, we don't have full topo data that goes all the way back to that corner of the lot, so I can't. From driving down the driveway, it's not an extreme slope. It's not a slope so steep that you couldn't put a house on it. But we don't have true topo data for it.
Meredith, I get what you're saying there, is that obviously again, looking at the criteria, the size of the lot, they got a healthy sized lot here, and in the context of the review obligation for 435, in theory, sure, you could relocate that footprint somewhere else on the property.
And I'm only thinking in context of other applicants, of somebody else who may have been told, you have to move the building back if you want to move it. So
Yeah.
are we discussing it? Not, it's just solely in context of this application, but we have to be fair to all the other reviews that we've done.
Absolutely. And in the other reviews we've done, I mean, it hasn't been a unanimous, consensus that, we've met all the criteria. Like, how many projects that we reviewed were, okay, yeah, you've got a big lot, sure, you could move it. But, some of these review criteria hold different weight than others. And, we've had the town attorneys chime in on that and substantiate it. Like, one of the big things I would think is a pretty significant consideration in looking at the potential relocation of the nonconformity is the mature tree growth, and that's come up a lot of times for us in the past. Like, hey, look, we're gonna create a much larger impact on vegetation and mature trees moving this thing than just working with where it is.
And all I'm saying is, as you were going through each of the criteria, I felt like there was just an effort to make it sound like each criteria was a reason why they weren't moving it back. And to say it again, I don't think each of the criteria is a reason not to move it back. There is reason not to move it back, but let's state the reasons why and the criteria that that's not the grade is not a reason to not move it back. On to the next one. That's okay. They're not going to meet all, it doesn't, vegetation. When we get to vegetation, we can discuss the big trees, but.
So, and I think, we've done this a couple different ways in the past, and it seems like, where we have a singular motion on each of these criteria, it feels like it stands stronger, even if the criteria isn't a reason for moving it back. I mean, so I think as we go through it, Meredith, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think we should have a motion individually on each of these criteria, just so it's clear.
I'm fine with that. We started off and Kim said you don't do it that way. So
Well, that's not how you've done it in the past.
We've done it both ways in the past, and
We have done it both ways.
isn't it our discretion to,
You're the one running the meeting.
yeah. No,
I
and
guess I would think that the easiest way to do it is to discuss each of the criteria and then have a motion of why this building doesn't
So that-
need to be and only say in the motion the reasons why it doesn't need to be moved back, that we don't have to say the grade doesn't stop it. It's just the criteria are parameters for us to discuss reasons why you wouldn't move a building back, but we can reduce the motion down to just the criteria that are of issue in this situation.
we
But
can do
whatever
it.
you want to do, it's any way is fine.
Let's have a single motion at the end, but make sure that we hit each of the review criteria in the totality of the motion. Is everybody okay with that? I think Dave nods his head yes. Christie's nodding yes. Thumbs up. Tracy's nodding her head yes. All right. So we talked about the size of the lot. The size of the lot is obviously a non-issue. It's a big lot, and it's not a primary criteria for relocation. Same thing with topography. I mean, it's reasonably modest topography sloping from the high point west to the low point east at the pond. We talked about that if the 30% expansion were to be not in parallel to the shore, but extend westerly perpendicular to the existing structure, it did sound like it would have a greater impact on topography. But again, we're looking at this in totality, and where, if we were to, make this structure non-conforming by relocating it back behind the 75-foot setback, I don't feel, and curious how the board feels too, that the topography is a limiting factor. Is that, Meredith, is that kind of along the lines of the review discussion?
Yeah, that's how.
Okay. potential for soil erosion. You know, again, if we were looking at a complete reconstruction behind the 75-foot setback, you know, I would think that the potential of soil erosion would be increased because of just the scale of disturbance on the property. I mean, here we're working with a localized existing footprint, 30% expansion to the south over existing topography that we're not trying to disturb and work with. And if we were going to reconstruct this whole thing behind the 75-foot setback, the scale is totally different.
I think the idea that they'd have to take out the old foundation is what makes sense of your argument, because they're building in the setback to add that 30%, which is probably more disruptive of soil than if they built back. But if they'd have to take out the old foundation, then you're disrupting all that earth within the 75-foot setback. So I would say, yes, this is the least disturbing of soil of the two scenarios.
And then, let's see, the location of other structures on the property. So, you know, I thought the garage was actually a limiting factor. I mean, it's got a sizable footprint as far as garages go on around here. And I was under the impression that we had a setback from that thing if the structure was to be relocated. No. So the location of other structures on the property does not appear to be a limiting factor for the relocation of the non-conforming structure. The location of the septic system and other on-site soil suitable for septic systems. You know, this one's curious because no one's really sure where the septic system is, the existing one. However, we've got some components of the septic system identified, like the existing tank location, you know, the line sets running to it, and then the future field behind the garage.
Because they're creating a new field, I don't really see that criteria as an argument against moving the building back.
I'm kind of halfway there on that. I like the idea that they're trying to minimize the impact by using the existing location of the existing tank, pulling the thing out, putting a new tank in, and using the existing locations of the line sets to it. Obviously, the disposal field is not a limiting factor. I mean, it seems like that thing there's some flexibility in where that can go, and they've got it well placed far to the west. But I think there's a couple components that may be limiting in relocation.
I guess I'd say the relocation of the tank, or the reuse of the existing tank, would be under the soils argument, the disturbance of soils argument that we made. But I guess if somebody else were to come forward and say, I don't want to move my house because although I'm going to rebuild my whole entire septic system, I just want to keep the tank in the same location, I'd say that is not an argument. You know, that's all that they had to say, I don't want to move the building. And that's where I'm thinking, yeah, it's nice that they're trying to reuse the location of the tank, but it's only the tank. The tank's not that big. It's really like they are going into the expense of building a new septic system. So
that's not I think what I'm hearing is that we're at least in agreement that that's not a primary limitation to the relocation of the non-conforming structure. I think the next one is though, that's vegetation to be removed to accomplish the relocation. You know, the property's got, again, it's got the biggest white pine on it I've ever seen. And, you know, it's, you can see on the site plan, there's multiple mature trees on the west side of the plan. You know, if we were to consider relocating the non-conforming structure behind the 75-foot setback, you know, it feels like you're going to be impacting that.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them. You know, and this, I think this is a rare, or somewhat of a, I should say, unique condition on Long Pond where you've got, you know, this kind of grouping of this kind of maturity. So I would say that vegetation to be removed to accomplish the relocation is a major consideration in limiting the relocation of the non-conforming structure. And then from there, you know, the 435 is talking about approval conditions. So again, and not trying to speed through this at all, but just to summarize it, again, we're looking at the size of the lot, the topography, the potential for soil erosion, the location of other structures, the location of the septic system, and the vegetation to be removed to make the structure compliant. And feel free to discuss further.
I don't want to always be saying, but I'd say what I sum up from our criteria between the vegetation and the disruption of soil is that because they're going to work with so much of the existing building, the disruption to the environment and the lot and the surrounding environment is going to be so much more minimal by working with what they have, as opposed to moving it back. That's the argument. That
No,
sums up the criteria that I get.
I would agree with that. I feel like it's a scale issue. You know, you're just going to be touching so much more of the property if it were to be relocated behind the 75-foot setback than what they're trying to do is in keeping it contained to the existing footprint of the non-conforming structure and having the 30% expansion expand to the south along the existing topography.
And I actually think in that discussion, although we said that the garage wasn't necessarily, it strikes me that a design of a new building behind the 75 would drive moving the garage.
I mean, the garage is going to be directly adjacent to a new structure behind the 75-foot setback. I think from, as we were walking through this, it did not seem that adjacent structures was a primary limitation. Might not look that great, having a relocated new construction adjacent to a garage that might not have a useful orientation to the new structure, but it didn't seem like it,
Sort of an
again.
obstacle. Doesn't prevent it from being moved back, but it would definitely be an obstacle. So it's not a non-issue, but it's not a prevention.
It's not helping. So kind of what we're gravitating here towards hopefully is just a kind of the mother motion that summarizes our position on each of these review criteria: the size of lot, the topography, potential for soil erosion, other structures, septic, and vegetation. Christy, you look like you got something to say.
No, I mean, I'm following and it makes sense. I don't have anything particular to say.
Like I recall another project we had further up on Northern Neck where it was a demolition. You know, they were gonna they wanted to take the thing down and reconstruct it in place, but it was on a 9-acre lot. And that was one of the few ones that we actually denied. You know, it's just,
That's the
again,
one, is that the one you approved once, but then you denied it the second time?
yes, that was before our time, I believe. No,
No, remember they came back and they changed the style of the building.
Yeah, they made changes and then they tried to go back to the first approval, but it had expired.
it expired, so
Mhm.
it was just, you know, it was too much redo on too big of a lot,
Well,
right?
that one too, it was clear.
Mhm.
There was a garage there, but it was all clear back there. They didn't have to remove trees.
Yeah.
And there was no topography concerns on that one.
You know, so like putting it in the context of other projects, I mean, here we've got, okay, sure, you got a big lot, but you're working with an existing footprint.
Right? They're not
You've got a
tearing it down.
heck of a lot of mature tree growth.
It's a case by case.
Yeah, it is case by case.
I think if this was being completely torn down, I think it would have a different
I
result.
think it would be a very different story.
But they're keeping the building there. They're not asking to tear it down. Well, it's a different circumstance.
I think somebody else should formulate the motion. Since
What do you, I hear ya. What do you think, Dave?
I think somebody else should too.
What do you think, Vice Chair?
This is like hot potato. So this is going to be the motion for all of 5.3.5.
Yes, 4.3.5.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say 4.3.5. Sorry. It's getting late. It's not that late, but it feels late. Okay. I'm thinking. You can see the steam coming out of my ears. I don't know. I mean, are we just gonna like lump all 5 criteria into one finding?
Yes, but in the motion, we're going to address each one.
Right. I'm looking for something. Hang on.
The first thing a motion needs to address is the size of the lot.
Mhm.
And it seemed like the consensus of the board is that the size
Right.
of the lot at 1.6 acres is not
Mhm.
limiting the
Mhm.
relocation of the non-conforming structure.
The size of the lot is not limiting?
It's not limiting it. I mean, they could pick it up and move it because there's enough area there to do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that
The slope of the land.
yeah, so and again, we just talked through that the slope of the land was also not a limiting factor. We're not dealing with severe topography on this property. I mean, despite that a topographic map wasn't included for the totality of the lot, just from observation and the site visit, that the slope is somewhat gentle going from east to the low point, or going from the high point west to the low point east at the pond shore.
Mhm. Okay, and then we already talked about location of other structures on the property as not being particularly limiting.
Right, so the proximity of other structures was also not
Mhm.
a primary limiting factor for the relocation of the non-conforming structure into compliance.
Although I don't
However-
think it's completely not limit. I think it's still a obstacle, but it's not completely limiting.
I think we can say that. It's not completely limiting, but it is an obstacle. And then we've got the potential for soil erosion.
Right,
And
which
so,
is not particularly an issue either, unless we rip up the foundation and move it.
well, I think we were actually saying that it is it's a scale issue. That if we were to have the structure relocated into compliance behind the 75-foot setback, you would not only have the disturbance of the new
Mhm.
construction, you would have the disturbance of the removal. And so we would be potentially doubling the potential for soil erosion by relocating it,
Mhm.
especially with the removal of the existing foundation, which is deemed by the structural engineer to be in good condition.
Right. Okay. I guess what I would start with then is, something to the effect of, in determining if or whether the building relocation needs to set back to the greatest practical extent, the board looked at the factors of size of the lot, slope of the land, potential for soil erosion.
Got nothing.
Put the brakes on, Heidi's trying to catch.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry, I forgot about that. Man, you got the flywheel going. Don't slow it down.
Does.
I got nothing other than in determining whether.
Hit rewind, Christy, and
Okay, So in determining whether the building relocation
Hold on. Okay,
meets the setback,
all right,
greatest practical extent,
okay,
the planning board
yep,
has considered the following.
yep,
And then I'm going to list 4 things, and I'm going to go back and flesh out the 4 things. But the 4 things are size of the lot,
okay.
slope of the land,
So you flesh them out, I won't write. I mean, should
Yeah.
we be doing this one at a time?
Yeah, I think we should flush them out, Christy, one at a time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I was just kind of giving her an outline, I guess. Okay. So,
And there's more
the
than
planning board considered the size of the lot, and the planning board has found that the size of the lot is not particularly limiting being.
Well, stop. She's using pencils, remember?
Sorry.
Again,
That the
size
size of the lot is not
yeah,
limiting,
is not limiting.
particularly limiting. Being at, was it 1.7?
0.6. Renee, 1.6 or 1.7?
Says 1.7 on there. but-
1.7.
1.7, thank you. 1.7 acres.
All right,
I did too. That's what text
Comma,
said.
semicolon, comma. The slope of the land was somewhat, it is somewhat gentle, as seen on the site visit, even though we don't have a topo map. So it's not a severe grade.
and therefore not limiting, maybe?
And therefore not limiting. Yep. 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 Yep.
Okay.
Comma. Also looked at the potential for soil erosion. Which is also not particularly limiting, given that the foundation will remain.
It is a limiting factor.
Say that again, Bill.
Christy, I think it is a limiting factor.
Okay,
preventing-
so this is where I'm getting confused, like in terms of framing it, because it's like by leaving the foundation there, it helps with not having soil erosion. So the limiting factor is if you ripped it up and removed it and reconstructed something, then you would cause more soil erosion.
Right, and the motion is being framed in the context of trying to achieve conformity.
Right. Okay, so the potential for soil erosion would increase if the relocation met the setback. Is that right?
In a nutshell, yes.
Okay, would increase if the what?
If the relocation of the structure was more conforming to the setback.
75%.
75-foot setback.
If the structure was relocated, maybe?
Yes. I think that's what I said. If the structure, what maybe I said, if the structure was relocated, that would increase the potential for soil erosion.
I think we should mention the issue of scale, because then we would have the, the new construction, the soil disturbance for the new construction, and the soil disturbance for the removal of
Yeah. So there would be 2 levels of soil disturbance, 1 for removing the current foundation, 2 for creating the secondary, the relocation foundation.
I think we should also just the current structurally sound foundation.
Yeah.
Right, it would be totally different if it was like crumbling and ineffective and unusable.
So it would increase the structure, it would increase,
The potential for soil erosion.
potential for soil erosion would increase if the structure was relocated to behind the setback, because such reconstruction would entail new construction and remove the current sound foundation.
Yes.
Does that work?
Structurally sound.
Thank you. I knew there was another word in there, structurally sound.
Okay.
And then there's one more.
Vegetation.
Are you ready for the last one?
Oh,
Yeah.
septic.
Yeah,
We did
septic and
septic?
no.
Yeah, the last one is comma, the it has to do with the location of other structures on the property. The building being, what do I want to say here? And given the current location of other structures on the property, such as garages and septic systems,
We don't mention septic system because there's a separate criteria for septic.
oh, okay, it's listed in here though. Not, it's listed in the Luso. I mean, maybe I'm using an old one, but it lists septic. Okay. Anyway, okay, strike septic. The location of other structures on the property are limiting, but not necessarily a barrier to meeting the setback to the greatest practical extent. I mean, is that where, I mean, would we consider like an old wolf tree, like the old pine, a structure? I mean, it's not a structure, it should be, but where do we mention the not wanting to do?
It's under vegetation, so.
Okay, okay.
Just why I keep kind of restructuring the motion is I'm just following along on the checklist. And as usual, the checklist isn't directly aligning with the work.
Yes.
So
which one are
That
we
is
doing next?
Luso.
yeah, so we just did location of the structures.
Yep.
Then the next one is the location of the septic system.
Do I have to do the last one, the septic system?
And vegetation.
And vegetation.
And vegetation.
Okay. Okay.
As presented
What-
on the.
Yeah.
I
Did
didn't
you
hear you,
hear-
Kim.
You could say something to the effect that, the septic system has as presented on the site plan.
The proposed septic.
Yeah, the proposed, yeah, replacement septic system.
Okay, and so I think then it's comma then that the proposed septic system as presented on the site plan as a replacement meets the setback to the greatest practical extent. Comma. And then moving on to vegetation. Given the current vegetation, especially some of the trees on the property. Is that big tree marked on the map?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say something, describe it like significant mature tree growth, which it really is. I mean, it's established.
Okay. So given the current vegetation on the property, oh, are you writing this, Heidi?
Yeah, but I wrote current significant mature tree growth instead of vegetation. Is that okay? I thought that's
Yeah.
where we were going.
Yeah, I mean, the category is vegetation, but we're talking about trees. So you could say, given the significant established mature tree growth on the property, parenthesis, e.g. vegetation, close parenthesis, the building meets the setback to the greatest practical extent.
It's technically a limiting factor for the relocation.
Oh, right. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Is a primary limitation for the relocation of the non-conforming structure.
Okay, so given the significant established mature tree growth on the property, comma, being a primary limiting factor in the relocation or the meeting the setback to the greatest practical extent.
No, don't say to the greatest practical extent. The mature tree growth is a primary limitation for the relocation of the non-conforming structure behind the 75-foot setback.
Okay. Yep.
And just to clean up one other thing is Christy, when you were referencing the septic system, you used the term to the greatest practical extent. And I think we need to strike that and say that it's not however it was worded with the proposed new system is not a limitation for the relocation of the non-conforming structure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so sorry, Heidi, you're gonna have to read that back and I'm gonna have to think it through when you read it back.
And then, this is the wrong one. Okay. And so far what we have is in determining whether the building relocation meets the setback to the greatest practical extent, the planning board has considered the following. The size of the lot, the size of the lot is not particularly it's not limiting being at 1.7 acres in size. It's not the greatest working. How about this? The size of the lot is 1.7 acres and therefore not particularly limiting.
Yeah.
Yes.
The slope of the land is somewhat gentle, as seen on the site visit, and not a severe grade and therefore not limiting. Do we need like to the, do we need to, do we need more after the word limiting, I guess?
You know, again, I've been trying to put it in the context of put the motion in the context of it is
Not a limiting.
a limiting factor in the limiting factor in the consideration of the relocation of the non-conforming structure behind the 75-foot setback,
But it's not a limiting factor, right?
it's not a limiting factor.
Oh, okay.
no.
I didn't hear you say not. It's something like, okay, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, do you want me to start over? Or do you want me to keep going?
Why don't we start over?
Sorry. In determining whether the building relocation meets the setback to the greatest practical extent, the planning board has considered the following. The size of the lot. The size of the lot is not particularly, I'm sorry, the size of the lot is set 1.7 acres and therefore not a limiting factor in the consideration of the relocation of the, I can't even read my own writing.
Non-
Of the
Non-conforming structure.
structure. Slope of the land is somewhat gentle, as seen on the site visit, and not at a severe grade, and therefore not a limiting factor in the consideration of the relocation of the non-conforming structure behind the setback. That's the last of that bit. The potential for soil erosion would increase if the structure was relocated behind the setback, because such reconstruction would entail new construction as well as the removal of the current structurally sound other structures on the property. Given the current location of the garage on the property, the current location of the garage on the property is limiting, but not necessarily a barrier to meeting the
relocation.
Relocation of the non-conforming structure behind the setback.
And then, so the consideration of the relocation of the non-conforming structure behind the setback. Location of the proposed septic system as presented on the site plan is not a limiting factor for the relocation of the non-conforming structure.
Yes.
Vegetation, given the current significant established mature tree growth on the property, e.g. vegetation, the building is
Is a limiting factor in the consideration of the relocation of the non-conforming structure behind the setback.
It's a primary.
Yeah, it's a primary limitation for the relocation of the non-conforming structure behind the setback. So those are your findings, and now you need a conclusion of law, say.
So if those are the findings of fact, so there, I think this is where we say, and therefore, the findings of, I know it's something about findings of fact and conclusion of law. I just can't put my finger on it right now.
You could say, and therefore the proposed reconstruction of the non-conforming structure in its present location meets the criteria of section 4.3.5 to the greatest practical extent.
Did you get that, Heidi?
Sort of.
And therefore the proposed
Maybe at the end.
Okay, so and therefore,
Yeah.
the proposed reconstruction of the non-conforming structure on its current location meets the standards of All of them?
4.3.5.
To the greatest
Okay, to the
practical,
greatest practical extent, yeah.
as
okay.
determined by the planning board. That's a marathon motion.
Yes.
You know, we did a lot of these for a long time and we got really good at it. And I feel like we have not done one of these in a long time.
I agree with that completely.
I'm just like rusty in understanding the framing, whether it's like in the affirmative or sort of the negative, you know what I mean?
But so if I recall correctly, we should be framing everything in the affirmative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Well, it's rare that you guys get applications where the property owners keeping the foundation.
Yeah.
it's-
They're typically tearing completely to the ground, and that's
Yeah.
why this isn't a common type of application that you see.
No, that's why it's giving me a headache, because like normally what we see is someone's trying to keep basically is someone's trying to keep it as close to the water as possible, and we're trying to nudge it back as much as practicable, you know. And this one is like different,
those-
you know.
Yeah, those are typically tear downs and rebuilds
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
from the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I should be using the term, you know, non-conformity and conformity. Like we're always trying to nudge things into conformity as much as possible, but we take into consideration things like a giant mature tree or super steep slope or setbacks, you know, and things like that. So this one's just like a little bit different.
You know, in the context of the comprehensive plan, remember, it's the board's, one of the board's main missions and these kind of things is to reduce nonconformity, right? And
Yep.
that's why kind of go through that's why 435 exists. You know, we got to
Mhm.
have some kind of review standards to, you know, see if that nonconformity.
Mm-hmm. And if we're going to let something stay non-conforming in any percentage, you know, a little bit non-conforming or a lot non-conforming, we want to make sure that we're clearly articulating why.
I'll second Christie's motion.
I need a bag of potato chips right now after that. So we have a motion, we have a second.
Any further discussion? None heard. All right, all those in favor, Christie,
Anastasia, aye.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, I.
Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
myself, William Hanley, aye.
Do we need a vote to approve the application, or was that enough?
No, you don't have to do that.
No. So with that, I'll say congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. It was interesting to.
Great presentation, Jane.
Yeah, for sure. Crazy. So guys, remember on this one, you've got 3 documents to sign. You got 436, 435, and 432.
You put that in the original packet.
Yeah. And we're putting the tax card in the original file too.
Let's put it on the front folder.
And
It's in the front folder.
that goes in the front folder.
My section 435 says William Hanley Chair, Christie Anastasia Acting Chair, so there's like this power struggle on section 435.
I'll yield any time. All right, is there any other business tonight?
Is everything in here that was?
We got the 3 packets, the tax card, the cover sheet, the advertisement. Yeah.
What happened with our new planning board member applicant?
Oh,
Yeah, I asked Bill about that.
I have no idea. We haven't heard from her, so.
She ghosted
got-
us?
She's
Did someone else steal her?
In
Yeah.
the end.
But we haven't heard back from her.
Do-
And she didn't show up at the last meeting, which she was informed that
And
you
am I,
guys were gonna do
am I
it.
allowed to ask who it was?
I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
Gloria Kunji.
Gloria.
Yeah, Kunje was what the spelling was for last name.
Yeah, her email is Gloria Vincent, so maybe that's like a change of last name.
Just to meet you.
Yeah, well, if I think, I know who she is, and be sure to catch her on the sidewalk if I see her.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, for the
She lives
record,
She lives on Old Firehouse Lane? I didn't think there was anything left on. Oh, yes, okay, there's, oh,
I know where. it's at.
yeah, for the record, we have 2 vacancies available on the board for alternate positions, so
Spread the word.
yes, please do.
Okay.
All right, and our favorite motion tonight then.
Wait, can I just say something, Bill? I won't be at next planning board on the 23rd. Just
Okay.
FYI. And then I'm gonna try very hard to meet the special one on the 24th. And I let Kim know. I mean, if I get hung up traveling or something like that, which I hope I won't, but there's a possibility I could miss that one too. But I'm gonna try to make it.
Okay,
Just FYI.
Mhm.
that's.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All those in favor? Dave,
Dave Ashmore, aye.
Meredith,
Randolph, I.
Christie,
Anastasia, nay. No, sorry. Anastasia, yay.
Tracy,
Tracy Keller, aye.
myself, William Manley, aye. Good night.
Good night.
All right, thank you very much.